Why do bad grades happen to good kids? Could it be something to do with writing? You bet it can. And today we're going to talk about children and writing. We're going to talk about what we can do to help children write better. My name is Vin Dacquino, and our guests today are Linda Silbert and Al Silbert. Linda and Al, let's talk writing. Great to have you here.
Nice to be here.
I know that you've been doing great things for good children. And a lot of it has to do with writing. You've written a whole series of books. Tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, and when did all of this get started?
Started a pretty long time ago.
Okay.
We're both teachers. My husband was a physics teacher for 35 years and math, and I taught elementary and went on to counseling, and we kept going and going and going, as you see, with degrees. But back in the 60s, I started teaching actually third grade right here in New Rochelle, and I noticed even back in the 60s, the kids were programmed. And I remember saying, coming in there, this wonderful, back in the 60s, all these creative things, and I said, let's start writing creatively. And these 25 little kids sat and stared at me. And they kept saying, but what do you want us to do? Does spelling count? Do I have to skip a line? And I realized they were just trapped. They couldn't write. They couldn't express themselves because they were so concerned about all the editorial things that all the teachers were telling them where to put the period, make sure you capitalize. And so I came home and I said to my husband, I have this idea of let's go and write a whole series of creative thinking workbooks. Okay?
Right. I know exactly what you're saying. You know, I also taught. I taught for 30 years English to sixth graders.
Yeah.
And you're right. It was frustrating that many of those children just couldn't write.
Yeah.
And you stared into blank faces when you asked them to write. So with all of this in mind, and when you saw that these kids just were not happening, you had to try to figure out what you were going to do about it. Mm-hmm. Now, the two of you have a wonderful program for children. You focus on writing. You have some materials that you created. Mm-hmm. What is the basic philosophy? How do we get kids to write when they have so many difficulties writing?
One of the things that you do is you come up with something that catches their imagination. It just draws them in. You could start with something as simple as a sentence starter about something that would just grab their attention. You give them opportunity to write without feeling any worry that they're writing the wrong thing or someone's going to correct them. You give them opportunity to express themselves through drawing, and that combination works wonders.
So you turn them on, get them excited about writing, get them to feel a passion.
Exactly.
Passion and to feel safe.
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 A
That's
safe
critical.
environment. Non-threatening environment.
Yes, it's safe.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. That's why that book, Why Bad Grades Happen to Good Kids, it's a book for parents, because parents, it's what parents need to know, what parents need to do. School is still, here we are in 2012, it's reading, writing, and arithmetic is writing.
So in a nutshell, Linda,
Yeah.
why do good kids get bad grades?
Because they have a problem usually in one of those three areas, and they don't have that safety net, that emotional strength.
There you go.
Okay, it's the emotion. Unless you have that safety net and they feel comfortable, our company is called Strong. We put that together because the first thing a child needs is self-esteem.
That's right.
Okay?
Gain confidence.
Gain confidence. They have to have the confidence. Trust. They have to trust that when they write that paper, no one's going to tear it up.
Right.
They have to trust the parent, and they have to feel that the parent or teacher trusts them. Then it's responsibility, that they have a responsibility to write. Okay?
And you know, Linda, that never changes. I have a writing group at the Mahopac Library. I have people 45, 50, 60 years old. Same way. When they come into the workshop for the first time, it has to be a non-threatening environment, and they have to eventually gain confidence.
They need it.
When you put some of yourself on paper, it's like dropping your pants in public. What you're doing is you're exposing yourself.
Sure.
And it's frightening for children.
It's frightening, and when I test children, at our learning centers. And if I give them something to tell me a story, I'll show them a picture. So I'm testing them. And sometimes their creative ability is so high. And the minute I give them that piece of paper, suddenly everything falls because they're so scared they're going to make a mistake. They're going to spell something
right.
wrong. So now they write the smallest word they can think of. They write 3 lines because someone's going to say, you spelt that wrong. No, rewrite it. You did. And a child is a child. Their agenda is to get out and play, which is what they should be doing. Children need to play. So we put together all these products so that children play. We have so many games and all kinds of things for children to play. And all of our products are just fun.
Now, we're going to talk about those products, but I just want to touch on a couple things.
Go ahead.
First of all, not only do you address children, but you address parents, so that parents can understand what to do for their children. I know it's frustrating. It's very frustrating because there's so many contradictory programs, and parents just don't know where to go. Now, I'm thrilled to say that this book has actually, won awards, and forward by Al Roker.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Al Roker, his daughter came to us, and so he got to know the services that we offer and how much we can help children. And so he was kind enough to endorse the book and write the forward. We were thrilled that we won 2 awards.
Wow.
The Forward Magazine Award and the Mom's Choice Award.
Excellent.
And
Excellent. So when you take on a child, you take on a family.
Yep. And the teacher.
And the
We
teacher.
contact the teacher because
Wonderful.
the teacher, in a split second, they're just as important as that family. Because our new book coming out is to help teachers. Because teachers, in a second, can destroy writing.
So it's not about lessons, it's about learning.
Learning,
And
yes.
the understanding and appreciation for learning.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. I have a library here. So let's start from the left and
Yes.
work to the right. What is this? And tell me about this program.
That is for preschoolers.
Preschool.
3,
okay?
4, and even 5-year-olds.
Get them young.
Yes, you got it. Because writing begins with scribbling. That's writing, okay? An interesting thing, I don't know, kids now, if you look at how they hold the pen, the pencil, they don't hold it correctly anymore, and it changed.
Pen, wait, that's the thing with a point on it?
Yeah,
It doesn't
that's
have
right,
a
that's
keyboard?
Right. These children are not used to writing.
Of
Okay?
course.
And so we put together a whole series of alphabet, numbers, shapes, and this one is I Am Special.
Okay, so the idea is to get them to understand the basics of writing.
Writing. They start writing, and then they put it together, and it's my own book, and they now have a book that they wrote.
So
At
they
3
have
years
to
old.
learn how to do simple things like hold a pencil.
Yeah,
I remember when I started in school, one of the things that we had to do, we had little things that we had to draw, and we had those little circles that
Yeah.
drove me nuts,
Yeah.
especially since I was a left-hander,
Oh, yeah.
and we used ballpoint, or the fountain pens. So I went home with ink all along the side of my arm because I was a left-hander and wrote across. And
Still
the
an
little
issue.
things about writing that we had to learn. So begin at the beginning.
Begin at the beginning, and they have a book, and everyone in the family is oohing and ahhing. They wrote a book. And they write their name, and all these pages. It's my own book.
Okay.
And you notice the yarn.
Yeah, what is
you
the
actually,
yarn about?
You actually make a string around the book, and that becomes your book.
That's their book.
It
Once you
turns
take
into an
that
actual
cover
book.
off, they do the title.
Ownership.
Ownership.
Own what you're doing.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Yes, feeling
Wonderful.
of self-worth, it's beginning.
Basic. Okay? Then we go to the wonderful world of gift giving.
Gift giving.
What's that about?
Okay, that's part of a series we came up with, creative thinking workbooks. Again, it can begin at 4, even 3. We were writing them when our kids were 3 and 5 years old. And we kept the books because we wrote in their answers. So they saw that we could communicate, they could talk to us, we could write it. Okay, and what their words were, because we tell children what they're saying is important. You see, they get so caught up that maybe they spelled it wrong, maybe someone's going to they'll get a bad grade. No, you want to say something, write it. As they get older, they start writing in the answers. We have space in there to draw in case it's still hard for them to communicate by writing, by speaking, and it's helping them think on a higher cognitive level.
There you go.
And they're safe.
Important.
Yes.
And they have to do the thinking.
Yeah.
For 5 years, at the end of my teaching career, I was a director of teacher training. And one of the things I tried to get across to some of these new teachers is that our job isn't to teach them what we know. It's to teach them how to learn.
Yes, teachers are guides.
Right,
and
there
they
you go.
forget they are guides.
Exactly. You have to guide them
Yes.
into learning, not teach
Not
them
teach- yes.
what they know. Teach them questions, not answers.
Yes, yes.
Good.
Good.
Okay, so here's a big question. Where do you separate yourself from the parent? At what point, what do you say to the parent after you teach a lesson? Do you say, okay, parent, it's your job to reinforce what I just taught? Or does the child go home, homework? How do you feel about homework? How much participation does the parent have to play in a child's learning?
Depends on the child.
Excellent.
Great
question. Great answer.
If the child needs a little bit of help, then the parent has to know that they need a little bit of help.
Okay.
And you look for the cues that your child will give you. Subtle clues, sometimes extreme clues, like crying. If you have a scene every day, if there's if every day there's misery in the house to be over homework, then look into it.
Wonderful.
I was just going to say, be very careful with homework, because actually now with the whole new Common Core curriculum, everything's changing in the country. We've been doing this for years. We keep telling parents, preview what the homework's going to be, preview what's happening the next day, and write about it, think about it,
Don't do the
talk
homework
about
for
it.
them.
You don't, and yeah, they've been graded already. Don't worry, walk away from those grades. If they get something wrong on it, find out why. Our whole focus is find the cause. And if you see a child's falling apart from the homework and the writing's an issue, look into it. There are many, many children that don't do well in school because of the writing.
There you go.
They can read, it's the writing.
And Al, I loved what you said about children are different. You do not teach writing. You teach children. And that's the difference.
Yeah.
Children are different. So they learn at different paces. Some kids are great at math, some are horrible at math. Some are great at creative writing, some are great at research. Like, when I was in college, people thought I was crazy because they would give us a choice. And they would say, you can either take a final exam or you can do a research paper. And I was like, research paper! I loved research, obviously. That's where I came from. And I had friends who said, are you nuts? You're going to have to spend days in the library researching this. And I said, yeah, that's great. And they were like, wrong. I'll study for a test. So children do differ. Paces. Do you find that children have windows that some learn slowly and then all of a sudden they come into their own?
Some do, some don't. And they have this thing, windows of opportunity. There are certain windows, but parents have to remember, though, that window doesn't close.
Yeah.
You can keep working.
Tell the parents,
with
get
children.
out of the window.
And some of the parents, I tell them, I have to tell you a very cute little story. I had one little girl, she was 6, and she had to write, and she was sitting there very nervous. And she was so tiny, she was just hatched. And her mom's sitting there, and her mom's getting so anxious. I finally said to this little girl, I said, do you mind if your mommy waits in the waiting room? And she said, I want her to go home. So she let me know immediately. She was fine then.
Yeah, there is a
Parents
time.
have to be careful to stand back a little if you see this.
And not only children, but siblings.
Oh, yeah.
You could have a kid who's dynamite and have a brother or sister who's not.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
And you have to know that just because so-and-so is related to so-and-so doesn't mean that they learn a certain way.
Yeah.
Children are children. You teach children.
Yes.
What's interesting is also, learning is not a race.
Right.
An example I always give, sometimes kids get into trouble because they don't read fast enough or write fast enough or get all their homework done or finish a test. And then people come down pretty hard on them because of that. A story I like to tell is picture an artist. There are 2 artists. One of them paints a picture every single day and sells them for about $100 or whatever. Another artist takes a month, but it's a masterpiece.
It's worth
And
waiting.
it's worth millions. And it just,
I tell that
there's
to
no
the
race.
parents.
There's no
I say to them,
That's right.
it's worth the wait.
One of my pet peeves with the education system if you're first grade, you need to know this. If you're in second grade, you need to know this. If you're what if you don't? What if you learn a little faster or a little slower? The whole grade system. You know, if you're 9, you belong in this grade. If you're 10, you belong in this grade. Well, you know what? People aren't made that way. They move faster, some move a little slower. So what you do is you kind of pick up the slack when it's not happening and try to fill some of the gaps in the educational learning.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What would happen if, what is this book about?
Okay, that's another one of our creative thinking workbooks, and it's what would happen if you could actually walk up walls and across ceilings? What would happen if you could become invisible? What would happen if nobody ever cooperated? We go into all these higher order thinking skills.
What's your goal? Your goal is to bring them to higher thinking skills.
Yeah.
How do you make relationships between things?
Yes.
Because isn't that what reading is?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things they have to do is understand what they're reading. So it isn't a matter of just deciphering letters. It isn't all phonetics. It's a combination of all of those things.
Yeah.
It's thinking skills.
It's thinking. We call it creative thinking, but it's also writing and drawing. I mean, we tell parents on the back, we actually say, don't worry about spelling. We're not against spelling. We're not against knowing how to put in all the commas, but let them at least feel safe enough to write, to create, to think.
When I was teaching about 10 years ago, I was also the writing coordinator for the district. Well, at that time, the country was in a flux as far as education because there was whole language and there was phonetics. And people were saying, whole language is the thing, phonetics is the thing. Well, common sense would tell you it's somewhere here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the middle. And there were people who were saying, no, you don't teach grammar in isolation, you don't teach phonics in isolation, and it has to be the whole language. Well, I was really a true believer in whole language. But I also understood that you needed to know the basics. So do you teach a combination of those theories?
Yeah, I'm actually a therapist for the dyslexia, which is an actual, dyslexia is not reading backwards. Dyslexia is in the language part of the brain, and it's having difficulty putting a sound with the image. That's what dyslexia is.
So people
It's in
believe that
language.
dyslexia is simply
has nothing to do with
backwards.
backwards.
Wow!
Nothing.
Wow!
Nothing.
That's good.
The cause of the problem is often neurological, where in order to overcome it, the kids have to use a different neural path, which is far less efficient than
So they need time.
normal path.
And most of these children have so much difficulty writing. Okay, I had one teacher say to me about this one boy, he is so belligerent. I give them assignments every morning. He puts his head down on the desk. He was in high school. The assignment is there. He knows we start the class 10 minutes after they do this assignment, and he goes to sleep. I said, he can't read it and he can't write. And I said, he is.
So you shut down.
He shut down. I said, and they actually show the dendrites on the end of those neurons shrink. When your mind goes blank, your mind goes blank.
Yeah.
Because neurologically, the brain changes.
Yeah.
And these poor kids, and it's writing is a huge issue, and no one thinks of it. They don't think that's so important.
And even behavior. It's so hard for me to get across to some teachers that the child is misbehaving because the child is confused.
Yeah.
At this point, he knows that he's failing.
Yes.
Failing. That
Yes.
word. I want to
Horrible.
strangle people
Yeah.
when they say he failed third grade.
Yes.
He didn't fail third grade. He had difficulty learning some of the things that you said he has to know by this date.
That's it.
And it's difficult. And it doesn't mean the kid is dumb. It means that there's a gap that has to be filled here.
Yes. When they come in with the report cards, I don't look at them. And the parents are going, what are you doing? I don't look at his writing. I said, because he's not there yet. He has to
Yes.
progress. I don't care what they're giving him
There
now.
you go.
Yeah.
That it's a process.
It's a process.
Learning is a process.
every child's
And it
unique.
doesn't happen at the same speed for the same kid just because they're both chronologically the same age.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons we have such a diverse range of things that stimulate their thinking, stimulate their writing. They can enter at whatever level they're able to, and then if things go well, they'll progress to the desired level that everyone is
There
asking
you
for.
go. So here's a segue.
Okay.
Lost in the Cave.
There you go.
What
Okay.
is Lost in the Cave? This looks like literature? Stories?
These are stories that we wrote using controlled vocabulary for kids from first grade to fourth grade. I actually did research. Talk about research. I love to do research.
Research,
Love
great.
it. Love it. And I actually went into schools to see how children reacted to the different situations. And it helps with, we call the understanding people books. Also thinking about understanding how children act, and so kids can relate to these characters and grow from these particular
One
characters.
of the things that my English students got a great deal from is say back. Remember the old days when you say, you have to teach them how to say back. You know, read the story and then tell
Yeah,
you
yeah.
what it is they read.
Yeah.
So that you know that they're understanding what it is. It's one thing to decipher words. It's another thing to understand what the words are saying.
Children, some of them just read a word list. And they come in, they say the comprehension's off. I said, because they're not reading, they're not
My
thinking, they're
child
not
knows
doing-
how to read.
Yeah.
Watch, and they
Then
can
they read a
the
whole word list.
And then you say, well, what does that mean? And they go, I don't know. Yeah.
And you always have to go a little further. I always tell parents or teachers, when I'm training teachers, don't just say, you understand? And every kid's going to go,
Yeah. What did you learn in school today?
Nothing. Nothing. It was, how was it? Good. Okay, say to them, give me one specific thing. Say one thing. And then they'll go, I don't know. And then you realize nothing's processed,
That
which
is
is okay.
right.
But now you know. You've got to continue.
That's right. That's right. And it's like, I mean, it's like anything else. If something seems wrong, it probably is.
It is. You're right. There is something usually.
Yes, it probably
But
is.
sometimes the kids need just that little starter where you just get them started. I learned how to write poetry when I was in 5th grade because the teacher took the time to show me how to begin to write a poem. So he wrote the first 2 lines. I said, oh, I can do that. And then
That's critical.
We never published.
Critical.
That happens with adults.
Adults, you have
they
to get
come
them
to me
started.
and they say, I'm a novelist. And I say, did you ever write poetry? And they go, no. And I say, did you ever try? And they go, no. You know the outcome.
Yeah.
Then they start writing and they go, oh my God, I'm a great poet.
They
I say,
can do
"Yeah,
it."
But you've never tried.
No.
And learning is taking risks.
That's safe. They have to be
And
safe.
risks are dangerous
Yeah.
and scary.
Yeah.
And you and
Yeah.
we have to set up a safe environment for children
Yeah.
to learn.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do is talk about the extent to which teachers, parents, and children are on the same team. They're not in an adversarial relationship.
Right.
They're on the same team.
Right. And I know where,
And that's
where
really
you're coming from. You know, I've been a teacher for a long time. And I've had wonderful friends who are wonderful teachers, but it's their way or no way.
No.
And they like to feel that they're the ones
Power.
taking control.
I've said so many times to a parent sitting there, you're not the police. Watch the P. You're the parent.
Right.
Okay, one time it turned out he was.
Improve writing skills.
There you go.
Okay, tell me about this one.
Okay, that is to work on middle school and high school level. And it's actually giving them ways to start the story, how to introduce, ways to finish the story. Now, the first line in there is every English teacher has their own way of writing. And every English teacher is going to tell you something else.
There you go.
Okay, so we tell them if you don't get a good grade, talk to the teacher, find out, because you may become a wonderful writer. Okay, we don't know.
Right.
You're just learning how to write.
I'm going to ask you a loaded question. Did you ever meet a child who couldn't learn to write ever?
No, I've had
course
many,
not.
many kids who just sat. And the parents will say, I make them sit in that room. He was in there 2 hours and there was nothing. I said, because he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
He's sitting there, he has no
You sit
clue. You
there
have
for
to give them
So just
ways
help
to
them
begin.
get started.
Help
Exactly.
them.
Just
Yeah,
a little bit.
I mean, writers. I work with writers all the time. And they say, what happens when you're sitting in front of a blank screen? I said, your mind's blank.
You're blank.
And you're going to have to start filling it. And you're going to have to find a place to begin.
Yeah.
One of the most important things about learning is understanding that a child is a child. And a child is different. You have to find that difference. There is nothing wrong with being different. What's wrong is not understanding your differences. and knowing that you could take that difference to heights.
Yeah.
You have to find out who you are and what you are. Speaking of heights, all these books and more on the way. Tell me about your new projects.
Okay.
What are you doing?
We have, okay, I'll describe it. We have 3 new books coming out.
Wow.
Yeah, we have 3 new books. It should be the end of November.
And are these books about writing? What are
Okay,
they?
well,
What are
the
they
first
doing?
one that you're holding up, it's called The Adventures of Tiger Tuesday.
Okay.
And it's coming out a read aloud story that parents can read. It's a fun fantasy story. And then I have follow-up books, storybooks, plays. Kids love to do plays.
Yes, they do.
And they'll learn the words like there and where, and because they have to say them. And then we have activities that they can write. So they have reading and writing, all follow up to Tiger Tuesday for primary grades. Then we're coming out with the teacher version.
Wow.
So because I've been training teachers, and we switched it, and we're going to be working with the teachers. Okay, and I'll talk about the last one. And the last one, do we have
Okay.
enough time here?
And then, yeah, go ahead. Tell me a
Okay.
little bit about it. We're down about a minute, so
Okay,
go ahead.
okay. The last one, I'll tell you very quickly. I have a 97-year-old mom.
Wow.
Who has always wanted to write a book about her mother. And she wanted to talk about this woman who came here as an immigrant, 1906, became a widow very quickly with 4 small children, and how this single mom, an immigrant living in New Rochelle, got married in 1908 in New Rochelle, how she survived.
So you incorporated your 97-year-old mother's story
Yeah.
into a book.
It's a book, and we made a little fiction, but it's a
In the
historical
30 seconds
novel.
we have left,
Yeah.
you also have a column in the local newspaper.
Yeah, I do.
And that column appears every week. Parents can read about it. I know one of them's in the Mayapack News.
the Mayapack
I read
News.
it every week. Wonderful things about what parents can do, frustrations about learning.
Yeah.
Linda and Al Silbert, contributing to children is contributing to the rest of the world. Sometimes we have to save the world one kid at a time. You're doing that. We thank you for it. We thank you for being on this show. It has been a pleasure to have Linda and Al Silbert here with us today. Also a pleasure to know that someone out there is watching your child's back. Reading is fundamental. It is important to understand that children are in fact children. Thank you for being with us. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Any last words?
Thank you for having us here.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.
And you're
Yes.
welcome. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us. And stay tuned each week for more information as we talk writing.